The Getting of Wisdom by Henry Handel Richardson. Dedication to my unnamed little collaborator. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting get understanding. Chapter 1. The 4 children were lying on the grass. "And the prince went further and further into the forest," said the elder girl, "till he came to a beautiful glade. A glade, you know, is a place in the forest that is open and green and lovely, and there he saw a beautiful lady with a long white dress that hung down to her ankles, with a golden belt and a golden crown. She was lying on the sward. Sward, you know, is grass as smooth as velvet, just like green velvet, and the prince saw the marks of travel on her garments. The bottom of the lovely silk dress was all dirty. 'Wondrous fair, if you don't mind, you'll make that sheet dirty too,' said Pin. 'Shut up, will you?' answered her sister, who, carried away by her narrative, had approached her boots to some linen that was bleaching. 'Yes, but Sarah'll be awfully cross if she has to wash it again,' said Pin, who was practical. 'You'll put me out altogether,' cried Laura angrily. 'Well, as I said, the edge of her robe was all muddy. No, I don't think I will say that. It sounds far prettier if it's clean. So it hung in long, straight, beautiful folds to her ankles, and the prince saw 2 little feet in golden sandals peeping out from under the hem of the silken gown, and—' 'But what about the marks of travel?' asked Leppie. 'Donkey! Haven't I said they weren't there? If I say they weren't, then they weren't. She hadn't travelled at all.' 'Oh, parakeets!' cried little Frank. 4 pairs of eyes went up to the bright green flock that was passing over the garden. 'Now you've all interrupted, and I shan't tell any more,' said Laura in a proud voice. 'Oh, yes, please do, Wondrous Fair. Tell what happened next,' begged Pin and Leppie. 'No, not another word. You can only think of sheets and parakeets.' 'Please, Wondrous Fair,' begged little Frank. 'No, I can't now. Another thing, I don't mind if you call me Laura today, as it is the last day.' She lay back on the grass, her hands clasped under her head. A voice was heard, loud, imperative. 'Laura, I want you. Come here.' 'That's Mother calling,' said Pin. Laura kicked her heels. The 2 little boys laughed approval. 'Go on, Laura,' coaxed Pin. 'Mother'll be angry. I'll come too.' Laura raised herself with a grumble. 'It's to try on that horrid dress.' In very fact, Mother was standing, already somewhat impatient with the dress in her hand. Laura wriggled out of the one she had on, and stood stiffly and ungraciously, with her arms held like pokers from her sides, while Mother, on her knees, arranged the length. 'Don't put on a face like that, miss,' she said sharply, on seeing Laura's air. 'Do you think I'm making it for my own pleasure?' She had sewn at it all day, and was hot and tired. 'It's too short,' said Laura, looking down. 'It's nothing of the kind,' said Mother, whose mouth was full of pins. 'It is. It's much too short.' Mother gave her head a slight shake. 'Don't you contradict me. Do you want to tell me I don't know what a length you're to wear in your dresses?' 'I won't wear it at all if you don't make it longer,' said Laura defiantly. Pin's chubby, featureless little face lengthened with apprehension. 'Do let her have it just a teeny bit longer, Mother dear,' she pleaded. 'Now, Pin, what have you got to do with it, I'd like to know?' said Mother, on the verge of losing her temper over the back folds, which would not hang. 'I'm going to school tomorrow, and it's a shame,' said Laura, in the low, passionate voice that never failed to exasperate Mother, so different was it from her own hearty fashion of venting displeasure. Pin began to sniff in sheer nervous anxiety. 'Very well, then, I won't do another stitch to it,' said Mother, now angry in earnest, and got up and bounced out of the room. 'Laura, how can you?' said Pin, dissolving. 'It was only you who make her so cross.' 'I don't care,' said Laura rebelliously, though she was not far off tears herself. 'It is a shame. All the other girls will have dresses down to the tops of their boots, and they'll laugh at me, and call me a baby.' And touched by the thought of what laid before her, she too began to sniffle. She did not fail, however, to roll the dress up and to throw it into a corner of the room. She also kicked the ewer, which fell over and flooded the floor. Pin cried more loudly and ran to fetch Sarah. Laura returned to the garden. The two little boys came up to her, but she waved them back. "Leave me alone, children. I want to think." She stood in a becoming attitude by the garden gate, her brothers hovering in the background. Then Mother called once more. "Laura, where are you?" "Here, Mother. What is it?" "Did you knock this jug over, or did Pin?" "I did it, Mother." "Did you do it on purpose?" "Yes." "Come here to me." She went with lagging steps, but Mother's anger had passed. She was at work on the dress again, and by squinting her eyes, Laura could see that a piece was being added to the skirt. She was penitent at once, and when Mother in a sorry voice said, "I'm ashamed of you, Laura, and on your last day, too," her throat grew narrow. "I didn't mean it, Mother." "If only you would ask properly for things, you would get them." Laura knew this, knew indeed that did she coax, Mother would refuse her nothing. But coaxing came hard to her. Something within her forbade it. Sarah called her high-stomached, to the delight of the other children and her own indignation. She had explained to them again and again what Sarah really meant. On leaving the house, she went straight to the flower beds. She would give Mother, who liked flowers very well but had no time to gather them, a bouquet quite the size of a cabbage. Pin and the boys were summoned to help her, and when their hands were full, Laura led the way to a secluded part of the garden on the farther side of the detached brick kitchen. In this strip, which was filled with greenery, little sun fell. 2 thick fir trees and a monstrous blue gum stood there. High bushes screened the fence. Jessamine climbed the wall of the house and encircled the bedroom windows, and on the damp and shady ground only violets grew. Yet with the love children bear to the limited and compact, the 4 had chosen their own little plots here, rather than in the big garden at the back of the house, and many were the times they had all begun anew to dig and to rake. But if Laura's energy did not fizzle out as quickly as usual, she was the model for the rest. Mother was sure to discover that it was too cramped and dark for them in there, and send Sarah to drive them off. Here, safely screened from sight, Laura sat on a bench and made up her bouquet. When it was finished, red and white in the centre with a darker border, the whole surrounded by a ring of violet leaves, she looked about for something to tie it up with. Sarah, applied to, was busy ironing, and had no string in the kitchen, so Pin ran to get a reel of cotton. But while she was away, Laura had an idea. Bidding Leppy hold the flowers tight in both his sticky little hands, she climbed in at her bedroom window, or rather, by lying on the sill with her legs waving in the air, she managed to grab, without losing her balance, a pair of scissors from the chest of drawers. With these between her teeth, she emerged, to the excited interest of the boys, who watched her open-mouthed. Laura had dark curls, Pin fair, and both of them wore them flopping at their backs, the only difference being that Laura, who was now 12 years old, had for the past year been allowed to bind hers together with a ribbon, while Pin's bobbed as they chose. Every morning, early, Mother brushed and twisted with a kind of grim pride these silky ringlets round her finger. Although the 5 odd minutes of the curling occupied were durance vile to Laura, the child was proud of her hair in her own way, and when in the street she heard someone say, "Look, what pretty curls," she would give her head a toss and send them all a-rippling. In addition to this, there was a crowning glory connected to them. One hot December morning, when they had been tangled and Mother had kept her standing too long, she had fainted, pulling the whole dressing-table down about her ears, and ever since she had been marked off in some mysterious fashion from the other children.